And it counts down.
Hey, good morning. It's Bob Brown here, and it's B Cube Sunday morning. Now, this B Cube Sunday morning we is always special on the second Sunday. We have living legend Tom Whitmore here, and he always brings us the funnest guests. In fact, I don't know why, Tom, but your first show with us where you had Greg Bear
Mm-hmm.
popped up on my Facebook screen. And I don't know how long we've been doing this, but it was a little fuzzy. It's kind of like we had low resolution cameras back in those days.
Well, it's back before you were using Restream, that's for sure.
Yeah, before we started using Restream. So tell us, Tom, who's your guest here today?
My guest today is famous game maker James Ernest, who has been involved in all sorts of interesting game background, which we will get into during the talk. We're going to just have the two of us today, so we're going to be talking back and forth about games, sports, trivia, and whatever actually comes up, just like usual.
Well, that sounds like fun. Are you ready to deal with Tom there, James?
I'm ready as I'll ever be. He missed my poker night last night, so we have some catching
I
up to
didn't
do.
get the deal.
Oh, what do y'all play when you play poker?
Oh, we play Hold'em because everybody knows it.
I love playing Hold'em. You can take money away from grown men that way. I mean, you'd be amazed how many poker players don't understand statistics.
And, well, I personally failed statistics 3 times, and I took it again because I thought, what are the odds?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Well,
I never took a statistics course that I remember, but I worked as a statistician.
That's good.
Well,
actually, I was an analyst of statistics, which is a different thing entirely.
Well, I didn't bring that up because of him missing your poker night last night, but I did. I just want to say I hope you all enjoy. I'm going to step back into the background and make sure you stay live, or do my best. And so that said, before I go, remember, Alternative Liberties is out there, available on at bookstores if you ask them to order it, on Amazon, and on Barnes and Noble. So if you have any desire to read the #1 book in political, I forget, it's a political book. It's a new genre we invented.
Actually, much more interesting in terms of its #1 status, as Karen told me, that it's #1 on short story anthologies.
Yeah, well, we slipped out of that slot, but we were, and it was sad to knock out Harlan Ellison's book. I mean, because I respect that book and that guy so much. But on the other hand, we got to love it. And it was that, and Tom helped proofread it, and for which I'm eternally grateful, and as are all of the authors.
Most of them probably didn't notice.
Do what?
Most of them probably didn't notice.
No, but that's the beauty of it. If we had it right, proofreading just fixes that comma, that open parentheses, that one that we had in the wrong way. Or like in one story, we cut off the last 2 words of a sentence. You didn't catch that one because you didn't see it. But it was like, how could I do that? But I'm going to let you guys talk about something far more fun, gaming. And now I'm going to send myself to the back room.
So there we go.
With that, he was gone.
Just like that. And the snowflake is no longer covering half of me.
Right.
That's their militant snowflake. That's the B Cube Press symbol. So let's start with a really basic question. What's the distinction between sports and games?
Oh, great. I don't know a thing about sports. You mentioned we were going to talk about it because we talked about the Super Bowl and before the start.
Well, how do you separate them in your head?
I don't, because games is a word that different people use to mean different things. I mean, we know what sports is, but it is a game in as much as puzzles in games magazines are games, or mind games that boyfriends play with girlfriends are games. But we splitting those hairs is academic and pointless, because it's more interesting to talk about things we actually do understand.
Well, I believe, having worked as a statistician, as I said, on the language of data, that the distinctions actually do make a difference. But as long as we're all not fighting about it, it works out.
Well, I mean, so a sport is a game. The game is such a broad word. I actually have a friend who's developing a sport right now, and he's trying to get me involved as a consultant, but I don't know the first thing about it. We sat down and had a brainstorming meeting, and we made up a thing that I thought sounded fun, but it didn't go anywhere. And I don't, it's outside of my wheelhouse. The kind of games that I understand the best are tabletop games. I've worked in digital games as well. I worked at Microsoft for a while. I worked at Xbox, and a few other local game companies because I needed the money. But tabletop is really where my understanding and expertise is. And even in that realm, there are so many different varieties of games. And I specialize in really lightweight, easy access stuff, like games that a non-gamer can play. And I see a lot of stuff in the marketplace that overwhelms me. I just posted a video from PAX Unplugged where I'm doing a walk and talk with one of my buddies, and he's got a new game out that is super duper complicated. It's got 18 factions and 900 pieces, and it's $100 or more. I don't even know how much it is. And he was joking about how we are at opposite ends of the design spectrum.
Well, since your game company, Cheap Ass Games, was founded on the idea that most people have the things they need to play the games in hand already.
Yeah, that was the marketing, Cheap Ass Games. So in '93, I was a freelancer for Wizards of the Coast, and I was watching how they dealt with outside submissions and kind of learning how the game industry works and how difficult it was, even for an established designer, to get his games published through them. And I thought, as a beginner, as a novice, I would have no luck at all. Yeah.
Let me add one tiny bit of context. '93 was the year that Wizards published Magic: The Gathering.
Yeah, that's right. My first job for Wizards was compiling their Magic Online Digest, that is stripping out 10% of MTGL that was worth reading and throwing away the rest. For that, I got paid in Magic cards, which I foolishly opened and played with. But in '96, I had a half dozen games that I didn't know what to do with and started publishing them myself as Cheap Ass Games. And I was just one guy with a laser printer. And so Cheap Ass Games was both an invention and a necessity. I printed envelopes on my laser printer and took them to conventions and sold them, and said to my audience, yes, you already have dice and pawns and play money, and that's why all these games you're buying are expensive, because you're buying the same spare parts over and over again. Let me sell you just the part of the game that's new, and it will be cheap. And that was pretty sticky. It worked for us for quite a while. Cheap Ass lasted, well, off and on for about 20 years in various forms, including being sort of revived by Kickstarter in the 2014, 2015 time frame. And it was weird to be Cheap Ass on Kickstarter, because Kickstarter is about floss. Kickstarter is about making a game really, really expensive looking and pretty and raising as much money as you can. And that was weirdly antithetical to the original Cheap Ass Games concept. But it's been a weird ride.
Did it work to do the Kickstarter with it?
We did 14 campaigns. They all funded with different degrees of success. The most successful campaigns that we ran were in conjunction with people far more famous than us. That's always the secret to crowdfunding, is to start with a bigger crowd. But ultimately we found ourselves sort of drowning in inventory because our business model on Kickstarter was to print extra for the marketplace, and that extra wound up sitting in a warehouse somewhere until we decided that it was just time to get out from under it and sell the company. We did that in 2019. So all the cheap ass games are currently under license to a publisher who doesn't really want them, and I don't know what's next, but we may actually have a fifth renaissance of cheap ass games in the next few years. I should hope that we do.
That would be interesting. I know you're still creating games. I played a game that you were creating, last month. So
you missed a good one yesterday. There's a new game on the table called Farmer's Market that is a bidding game with our 5-suited deck, the Vines deck. And Owen, the crazy poker player, really, really liked it. He was like, I have to tell you, I really think this game is really good. It's like brand new. No one's played it until yesterday. And so that was fascinating. Here's a poker player who's a super aggressive, likes crazy bidding and betting, and this is not a gambling game at all, but it is a quick game of either taking cards into your hand or promoting them to where they are worth points. And if they're not ever promoted, if a particular rank isn't promoted, it's worth negative points. And at the beginning, you take cards into your hand and they're worth negative points unless you go back and fix that later. And it's super chaotic and kind of weirdly take that, even though it's just numbers on cards. Anyway, it's fresh. It's top of mind. We worked on it yesterday, and it'll be up on the website tomorrow.
Cool.
And these days, the website is Crab Fragment Labs. Since I sold Cheap Ass, Crab Fragment has been my design studio, and in a sense, it's cheaper than Cheap Ass because I'm not even attempting to put stuff in retail stores anymore. I am relying on my audience to print and play these games themselves. There are some games that they can order from Drive-Thru Cards, who manufactures card games one at a time. There's some games that are just rule books, and all you have to do is download the rules. Some like abstract style games, which are very hard to put into retail stores, but I like writing them. Those you would have to, you can draw the board in the sand. I'm being asked to put the website in the comments.
Type it in the private chat, and Bob will put it in.
Yeah, I got it. Typed.
Yes. I was going to push for that in a second myself, but I wanted to eat. I was just having fun listening to you.
Well, you got me with the chat. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm giving away games. I'm trying to teach people how to print themselves, print and play themselves, and it's a struggle, but it's fun for me because I like making the kinds of games that are hard to sell. What I try to teach new game designers is the things that you see in a retail store are not the only kind of games that there are. Retail creates a specific kind of product that is big and fat and expensive and infinitely expandable, and it's hard to sell a traditional lightweight game, the kind of game that's just played with the regular poker deck, because there's sort of nothing to sell there. And people certainly do that, but as a designer, I feel like that space is more interesting to me because it's harder to make a game with fewer moving parts.
Yeah, if as the game gets bigger and bigger in terms of audience, people add on things. There's the whole set of accoutrements that go with bridge, for example.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And if you want to make money on bridge, you sell the tools. If you want to make money on chess, you sell chess sets, but you're not really selling the rules because everybody already knows those. It's a different beast entirely than Gloomhaven, where, it's a $200, 40-pound box that I literally injured myself lifting 2 weeks ago.
Yes. At least you didn't drop it on your foot.
I did not drop it on my foot. No, what the story of that day actually is, I went to IKEA. I bought a shelf, and I'm sure that I really tweaked my back, wrestling that cart around. But then when I was helping someone else lift her Frosthaven into her car, And that was when my back was like, no more, stop. Let
The
it
straw
stop.
that broke the gamer's back.
It really was. I mean, it's 20 pounds of straw, but still, I don't really blame Frosthaven for my injuries. I just know that's when it started to hurt.
So selling just the
But I don't want to be in the business of making board games that you have to lift
Yes.
with your knees.
selling just the rules is really kind of a hard sell because there are so many books out there of rules already for all sorts of games. I mean,
Well, absolutely, and I'm not. I have a Patreon. People can support what I'm doing if I want, but all the games at Crab Fragment have a free version that if you just want to consume them without paying me, that path is there. I feel like I need to get my games out into the public and with my name on them at any way that I can. And investing in production is super risky, not really worth it in a lot of cases. I want to make sure that people play my games with my name on them at least once before a publisher does a copy of them and doesn't pay me. That happens all the time.
Yes, well, it's an interesting problem. We've lived through a period in which at least 3 new types of games, things that I would say, if you look at the Linnaean hierarchy of games, in our lifetime, you've got Dungeons and Dragons, you've got computer games. Well, they're more finger sports than games. And
well, that's a broad category
still,
to sum under one umbrella.
It's a broad category. And you've got Magic the Gathering, which is a new type of card game.
I think a lot of the developments at least on the hobby gaming side, have been inventions of distribution as much as they are inventions of game mechanics. So Magic the Gathering, for one thing, D&D did everything first, but Magic was a new way to market a card game, and D&D was a new way to market a tabletop game as well. New ways to package and sell things, whatever those things are. There's been a lot of other similar types of inventions, and Kickstarter is not a single game, but I think that is another marketing method that has changed the industry quite a bit, because crowdfunding as a pre-order has made it easier for small publishers to raise the funds that they need to create a game and know that they're going to sell through it.
Yeah. Well, to some extent, Kickstarter is the self-publishing of the game world.
It is, but not most. A good number of larger publishers also use it. It's kind of de facto pre-sales and marketing now.
So, did you find that it was worth the time and effort to use it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think a small publisher can do it any other way. In fact, when Kickstarter was young, retail stores thought it was dumb and they didn't like it. And they thought erroneously that they were losing all of their market share to Kickstarter backers, when it's really sort of a different audience. The retail store looking at Kickstarter said, that is a sale that I am not making, and therefore it is bad for me. And pushed back on publishers, myself included, and said, if you Kickstart a product, I won't buy it, which was just a bluff. That's not true. So I said, all right, here is a set of 3 games that I am not Kickstarting. How do you like these? And they said, never heard of them. And I was like, okay, I am done. I'm done with this. I made 3 games in 2015 or 16 that we called the Spring 3. They were all produced together to try to save money. They were produced in slightly better than the original cheap-ass style boxes, but they were black and white boxes. One of them was a redevelopment of an older game called Captain Treasure Boots. And the other 2 were new games, Fish Cook and Veritas. And they're really solid little games, but they got no marketing because we did not Kickstart them and should have. And in fact, had I not sold cheap-ass games, I think a deluxe version of Fish Cook would have been the next thing that we put on the schedule. Fingers crossed, Cheap Ass is in a black hole right now. If it ever emerges therefrom, it may be Fishcook right back up on the top of the list.
Interesting.
Again.
So you say that you sold Cheap Ass Games to somebody and you're thinking about restarting it. How does that work? Once you sold it, how do you get it back?
Well, so selling is a shorthand for we license the product line, but we license the entire product line. And under that contract, if the publisher maintains even one of those titles in print, they have the right to manage the entire catalog. If they let everything lapse for 3 years, then it reverts to us. It is still a license. What we did literally sell was the inventory. And in fact, that's where all of the money from the sale actually changed hands. Was they bought our stuff out of our warehouse and we didn't have to worry about it anymore. But the ongoing terms are of a license. They still pay royalties on the products that they sell. In theory, if they develop new products, I would get royalties on that as well. But the company itself has changed hands and the new owners have no knowledge of the value of what they have, or perhaps they correctly estimate that its value is 0. In any case, we are negotiating with them for them to exercise their right to abandon the contract because they can stop it whenever they want. We have to go jump through hoops to stop it for them, but that's the situation.
So that's, I'm sure, something that a few of the listeners would want to know about. How do you negotiate something like that?
You mean a sale? How do you negotiate a sale like that? I mean, or how do you negotiate a buyback?
I mean, the contract, the whole idea of negotiating a sale like that. There are a lot of pitfalls in there. There's a lot of...
There are grotesque pitfalls, and we fell into some of them. I mean, including the fact that the whole kit is licensed as a group. I think in the way it went forth was we knew we wanted a plan to get out from under the stresses of running a business, which is legit. We shopped around. We talked to publishers in the hobby game space and said, this is what we're offering. Are you interested? And we found people who gave us offers. We took what seemed like the best offer from some young and excitable humans who really wanted to get in there and develop stuff with us. And, negotiating the details of that sale are not really my specialty. I can look back on it and say that I got a bad deal, but I wasn't really in the room where it happened. So whatever. It was a kind of deal that you make with friends, though. And when they got into a situation where you have to sell to strangers, that deal suddenly gets a lot worse.
Yeah. No, we all know what that that feels like.
Yeah. I mean, we're at the shallow end of the money pool here. We all kind of know that we're doing it for fun, and none of us is an expert. And man, people who don't know what they're doing can be such a hassle. I'm in the middle of a long-term argument over a game that I licensed to a publisher 7 years ago with a 3-year sunset, and they just strung us out every year. They said, we're about to bring this out. We're about to bring this out. And finally we said, no, you're not. Give it back. And because they kind of don't know what they're doing, it is not easy. They kind of think that they own more of it than the contract says. There's a lot of stuff that happened that had no contract at all. And so they have a different opinion about what they own than we do. And if we had known what we were doing, or if they had known what they were doing when they got into this was kind of their first game publishing project. And it shows because the paperwork is garbage, and extracting the rights back from them is a pain, not because we don't own them, but because they don't think we do. And just, this is what it's like to operate at the shallow end of the pool. And I'm sure that the deep end is uglier, but then you can afford a lawyer to do all this headache for you and just reap the rewards. And seems like it would be easier. I don't know how to put this any other way, but if only I had a lot of money, all this would be easy.
Well, that's a perfectly good thing to say. Lawyers have the advantage of making things clear to them.
Yeah.
And making things defined.
Well, I mean, yeah, they do speak a secret magic language, but yeah, like if you have enough money to throw at a problem, you can make it go away. You can even make it turn into more money. there are so many weird, horrible examples of this happening in front of us right now. But yeah, as a lot of us try to do all of our own lawyering and drywalling and plumbing and gutter cleaning, it turns out that it's only as good as we are at it, and sometimes that's not very good.
We had the amusing thing of for various reasons we ended up having to redo our entire basement because of a cat getting stuck in the ceiling for 3.5 weeks. And the last wall that we hadn't dealt with, we went to attach something to it, and the person putting up the electric lights, the lights on it, couldn't find any beams. So they took it down, and we discovered that the previous owners had taken out all the support beams of the front half of the house.
Just to make it look nice.
Because they were planning to do an expansion of the basement, and they didn't get around to it, so they just drywalled it back up.
we'll save this for later.
Sell it to somebody. And when our electrician found this, he had just had a heart attack, and we were afraid he would have another one. But we did take care of it.
Well, luckily he had medication.
Yes. We did manage to take care of it eventually, but again, it's a question of if you can throw money at something, you can actually fix it. You know, part of it is Vimes's boots theory. You know, if you've read enough Discworld to run across that, which has actually been picked up by real economists.
I've read enough Facebook to run across that one pops to the top pretty quick.
But it's amazing that Terry actually got picked up by real world quote scientists end quote with this very simple economic theory.
Why don't you tell our listeners what that is?
The short version is, if you can afford to buy expensive, well-made stuff, it will last much better than the cheap stuff that you can buy easily, that you can actually afford right now. And you will have a better result in the long run. Being able to spend money.
Yeah, being broke is expensive is kind of the point. And one player, what the person with less money buys cheap boots which wear out again and again and again, and spends more money in the long run than the person who could afford the expensive boots to start with. And that's just true. That's the game theory of economic existence, unfortunately, and that awful game that we've based our economy on only works because you get universal basic income of $200 every time you pass.
Yeah, right. Yes. I must say that having reached the age where I had to start collecting Social Security or forever hold my peace, I find it strange that money comes in every month without me having to do anything particular.
You already did it. Yeah, you already did it. You're just paying yourself.
But somebody made me do it. I would.
Oh, somebody made you put the money away. Yeah, for sure.
I would not have not have gotten there on my own. So, given all that, what makes? Let's go back a little bit further and say, what makes a game a game? What makes something fun?
Well, so academic pedantry makes a game a game. The exercise of defining what a game is always entertaining, but never.
It's like
productive.
Defining science fiction.
I think we both know what it is and could quibble over the details.
There are edge cases,
but,
yes.
I think what's more interesting to think about is the definition of play, and that is, I think. Well, first of all, we know that humans and animals of all stripes are hardwired to learn about the world around them, and we do that through play. We experiment on systems, we make predictions about the results, and it is fun. And we're talking more about games now, but it is fun when we are right most of the time, but not always. And in Ralph Koster's theory of fun, he talks about in video games more specifically, but that they are fun when they are challenging and not confusing, when you're able to predict everything that the game is going to do, you become bored of it, and it needs to ramp up its complexity to continue to challenge you. But if you are confused by everything that happens, that's not fun either, because nothing you do seems to make any difference. And so play is that thing where you bounce on the big sheet, or you shake the tree and see what falls out. And you do make predictions. It is sort of a microscientific method. You make predictions about what your actions will result in, and you are satisfied when those predictions are right, because you feel like you're learning about the system. And you learn more when your predictions are wrong. And learning is just like food. Like we just love to do it. And that's kind of why there's an example. There's a video. I don't have a link. But it's goats playing on a big metal sheet. It's a bouncing metal sheet, like bowed up in the backyard. And these little goats are jumping up on it and knocking each other off. And this is like a great microcosm of play. They're poking at the thing to see what it can do. Can they stay on it? Can they knock each other off of it? Right. And the kids are having fun, and the grown-ups are in the corner just looking at this thing going, ah, and that's like how grown-ups are, because they feel like they've seen everything. The system is not going to surprise me ever again. I know how it works, and I'm done with it. And that's how people approach games. There are gamers who really need a lot of challenge because they feel like the simple games are too simple. I know people who will look at a brand new game and say, this game is stupid. It just do the obvious move every time, and then I just win. And I'm like, okay, well, he's bored of this. Even if he's wrong, he's bored of this. But the kind of games he likes, other players look at those games and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what anything is. And they just can't even check in because they don't get it. So games are how we play inside of what they call the magic circle. We know that it's imaginary, and so we can try stuff that we can't try in the real world, or we can have a kind of interaction that we can't do any other way. But because we know that it's all sort of bounded by this, game space. And some people really think that's boring as hell. Like they don't, if the game is not significant to them in their real life, it's not worth playing. That's kind of the difference between gamblers and non-gamblers. There's gamers for whom it needs to be isolated on its own, and gamers for who it's only relevant if it's about money, and that's like permanent and more important to them. They want to bet money on a football game or go play blackjack or for real money or whatever, because playing it at home for not money is dumb. It's hard to get those personality types to overlap. Like I have both. I like both of those kinds of games, but I see a lot of gamers who just hate gambling because it's too permanent, and gamblers who hate gaming because it doesn't matter.
Well, in some ways, I want to cycle back to something that you just passed over, which is that gaming is sort of a mini scientific method.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more interesting to think of the scientific method as macro gaming?
Well, sure, if you like.
People get into doing things with science or things with the real world because they've had fun with games that felt in a way similar to them.
I mean, they're both journeys of discovery, and I think it becomes real and work and science when it has that productive result, something that is useful in the real world. I personally like making games that are based on real world systems, and so maybe you can bring something that you learned in the game into your real life and be better at it. I think chess has always been held up as a paragon of learning, that if you can play chess, you're better at interacting with people. And I think that sort of oversimplifies how people act, but
yes,
games are can definitely teach you things about the real world, and can definitely have value outside of themselves. I think games as educational tools, even if they're not directly related to the subject they're supposed to teach, can be really useful in education. And except set has no worthwhile application outside of set.
Well, actually, pattern recognition does.
Yeah, but anti-pattern recognition just breaks my head. I hate that game. Mostly, I mean, but there's if you don't know set, I don't know if you don't know set, but if you don't know
I
set, well, I know, but there are many people listening
Yeah.
who are not you. Tom knows everything. The
Yeah. That's
the
one of the
game of
games
set has cards that have, I think, 4 different characteristics. It's the number, shape, color, and pattern on each card, and you have to identify a set of 3 of them that are either the same or different on every axis. And spotting stuff that is all the same is very easy for me because I feel like that's a trick that I bring into the game from elsewhere. Spotting things that are all different doesn't, I have no other place in my world where I must do that. And so the first time I played set, it was with people who are really good at it. And that's part of the frustrating is like, they were just laughing at me because I was terrible and I don't want to ever play that game. But the other thing is I knew right away that if I could learn this game, I could become good at this game, and it would be completely useless to me in the rest of my life.
You come to an interesting thing on games there, which is playing games with other people is part of the fun. But if you're playing with people who know it much better than you do, it's not so much fun. And
That depends on the game.
How do you
That is a design
challenge?
challenge. A design challenge. So we would call that a family game, a game where people of different skill levels can still have a good time. And chess is the anti-family game, right? Chess is the one game where your opponent is watching you make every mistake, and you feel just exposed and raw, right? That's a reason that people don't like chess. Now, people like to win at chess, and they like to be the person witnessing the other's mistakes, and that's great. But I'm not that person. I'm the other person. I don't have the energy to get good at that game. But I certainly am self-conscious about how bad I am. But at the other end of the spectrum, gambling games and coin flipping games and games where there's no, you can't make a mistake because you can't make a decision. Those can be won by everyone, and those are fun for a huge number of people. When we try to make a so-called family game, we want to include both of those player types to some degree. Someone can make informed decisions and have a better chance of winning, and yet someone who is new to the game or doesn't want to spend a lot of effort on it also has a good chance of winning, just not quite as much. That's how we include everyone in that space. There's really nothing that is going to include everyone, but you can make a game for parents and kids, or expert gamers and casual gamers, if you give both of them something to do.
And there's a subtle point sitting in there that there are some people who play games only to win.
Yeah.
They feel good only if they're the person who comes out at the top. And there are other people who feel fine if they've done what they think is a good job.
I mean, I wouldn't say those are the only 2 categories. It's not about doing a good job. For someone who is there to be entertained, they don't give themselves points for how much fun they had. They're there to interact with other people, and winning is incidental to that. I think you play in my weekly poker night, and I think that nobody there cares whether they win or lose $10. And poker is actually kind of lovely because it delivers mini victories. Like every self-contained hand is an opportunity to succeed in a clearly defined way. I succeeded, I got that pot, or I succeeded, I got more into that pot than I otherwise might have. But we don't care who wins and loses. We may personally keep a record of whether we won or lost, but we're not devastated if we don't, because we're there to tell stories and have fun and have a thing to do with our hands while we're there. So, those are the kind of games that I like to play. Those are the kind of games that I like to write, where the experience is happening and as next to the game and not buried deep inside of it.
Yeah, Jenna Hannon Moore over in the comments says a blowout is in either direction is never fun.
Yeah.
That a game that's relatively close is just fun. And I actually get a great deal of pleasure in poker out of getting out early when I've got something that's not going to work.
Yeah, folding when you should fold is a mini victory of itself. It's very nice. And yeah, if we always describe people's experience of games in terms of how close they were to winning, we are missing a bigger picture, because we're not keeping a ledger of who told the best joke. There's no score for that, but that's kind of what I'm there for. I grew up playing games like this. My grandmother taught me how to play draw poker when I was a child, and the grandparents on the other side were super pitch players. Pitch was like a table ritual at when the holidays. The family would get together and they would play pitch. And to be a child, you wanted to be at that table. You wanted to be grown up enough to be allowed to like throw those cards around. Yeah, Yahtzee just came up in the chat, and that's another one that they played a lot. And Yahtzee's not a brain killer, and it's clearly luck based, and you just do the best with what the dice give you. There's no long-term strategy in that game. It is a totally tactical, react to what you have, follow the procedure and hope. And doggone it, that's fun. It's you poke at the system and it does stuff, and sometimes it surprises you, and that's enough. Now, certainly there are chess style players who find Yahtzee to be just awful because so much is determined by the dice, that they don't feel as though they have enough control to win on the merits of their skill. So yeah, not everybody likes that, but that's kind of where the fun is in those games.
Yes.
So this says Cards Against Humanity. It's about who told the best joke. It is, but it isn't, because every joke, good or bad, is still worth 1 point. I mean, you walk away from Cards Against Humanity having had a good time and fun, and it doesn't matter at all who won. At least to me. And maybe there are gamers for whom the winner of that game is the be all end all of the experience. But I don't remember who won a game of Cards Against Humanity. I remember once in a while when my card got picked. And that game specifically is kind of a flop in my house because we don't need permission to tell jokes. And that's kind of what Cards Against Humanity does, is it puts the jokes in your hand and said, just read these cards, sweetheart, and you will be funny. So some groups need that and my group doesn't.
Well, there's a meta level to it. I was playing Cards Against Humanity at a convention in Minneapolis, and a card came up and said, what keeps your relationship together? And I had the card copious amounts of money, and I put that in, and my partner, who is Karen, who's the one who's played the other side, picked that as her favorite because it really described what our relationship was. But the meta was that we both knew that would be funny to us.
Right. Yeah, I do have a favorite story from Cards Against Humanity as well. The card was, you only want blank until you get blank. And I said, can I just submit one card for this? And they were like, okay, sure. And I gave them time travel.
Yes.
Like, I'm proud of that. I don't know who won. There were like 30 people in that hotel room. I don't care who won. Like, that is a minute by minute kind of experience.
Yeah. Well, and improv always is.
Yeah.
A lot of the idea of improv is what's happening right in the minute. And to some extent, that's true in juggling too, since I know you're a juggler and not everyone else here does.
I am indeed. I am, or perhaps I should say I was.
Well.
Oh, well.
All of us have things days. We were.
Now that I can throw my back out lifting a board game, I think my juggling days are behind me. But maybe if I did a little more, I would get a little less of that.
How do you outgrow a game? And what does it mean when sometimes you go back to it?
Well, I mean, we talked about it earlier, I think, but a game is boring when it doesn't surprise you anymore. So it's possible to outgrow a game when you just feel like you've played it enough. Two of my testers worked on a lot of iterations of a game that I did called Capital City, and so they're tired of it, and they're like, "It's a good game, it's fine, but I've played too much of it." So I think you can outgrow it in from that sense. I mean, you can also just be tired of for all kinds of other reasons. You could be tired of the people who play it.
Mhm.
You could be tired of the cost of playing it. There's all kinds of reasons to stop playing a game, including just picking up another game. You know, I think our houses are full of stuff we bought and forgot to throw away, and so are the games that we play can only sustain so many hours every day.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because you say, as you say, we play Hold'em mostly, but you also were one of the co-authors on Saturday Night Poker with
Yep.
Phil Folio.
Phil Folio's poker night was an entirely different experience than mine, and it's a shame that it's not on anymore. We keep egging him back into the arena, but uh, I do also love Dealer's Choice Poker, and in fact, I think that Dealer's Choice Poker is an excellent way to learn how to do game design, because poker has these fundamentals that you can tweak one at a time and see what happens next. I actually pitched PaxDev a workshop of teaching people how to do game design through Dealer's Choice Poker, and they passed on it because they were like, people don't like poker. I'm like, no, that's not what this is at all. But okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I still strongly recommend that if you don't know what Dealer's Choice Poker is, if the only poker you know is Texas Hold'em, you have to, cast your mind back 30 years when the quote unquote only poker games were 5-card draw and 7-card stud. And those are most of the Dealer's Choice variants of those games are of those games. But some of them are weirder yet. I mean, some of them aren't even scored like poker at all. Like, they sort of wind up in the same games because you can play them with a poker deck and you can put money in the pot, but they're not in any way poker. But every variation, every wild card, every procedural change, every new card, every extra card changes I wouldn't say the fundamentals of poker, but changes the strategy of the game in really interesting ways with a tiny, tiny little change. My favorite Dealer's Choice Poker game was invented by Phil Folio's group, specifically Jordan Bojar, who it's called Frankenstein, and it is 5-card draw, but a monster is made of the discards, and if the monster wins, then the other best hand has to match the pot, and the game keeps going. And what that means is, in a group of 7 or 8 players, that monster is going to be fierce because they're going to try not to have the best hand, because if they do, they're going to have to feed the monster. Everyone throws away good cards, and the monster is huge, and the monster wins. Boom. And so someone matches the pot, someone matches the pot, someone matches the pot. You have this opportunity to fold. If you think your hand is going to be the one that gets bitten, you can get out and not pay the monster. And as people leave the game, the monster gets starved down to the point where it might not be the best hand after all. And so now you're like, how many cards did that player throw away? How many cards did that player throw away? Do I think I can beat what's down there? Or am I going to keep trying to shoot low? There's an inflection point where players they stop trying to have the lowest hand and they start trying to have the best hand. And that inflection point is different for everyone and at a different number of players and a different number of discards. And that's fascinating. And it's a major change, but it's only one change to the game, which is to say the discards are now relevant. That's super entertaining and educational. And when you talk about designing a new game from scratch, you have so many more avenues of exploration even than in Dealer's Choice Poker. There are just too many choices. You sort of have to settle on something and say, well, this is my core game. Now I'm going to tinker with that, because every tiny change you make is still going to have like huge results in the way the game plays out.
Yeah. My personal favorite on Dealer's Choice Poker is Anaconda, because I get to see a lot of cards.
Right. In Anaconda, you start with 7 cards, you pass 3 and then 2 and then 1 all to the left. This is canonical Anaconda.
Yeah.
And after that, you've seen 13 cards and you know what you gave the person after you. And this is critical. Anaconda is high-low. So you may be trying to have the best hand. You may be trying to have the worst hand. And by what your neighbor passes you can guess what they are trying to do as well. And then there's a second phase where people reveal their cards one at a time and bet after each one. Well, you've seen all of those cards. And you can determine through which cards they throw up whether they're trying to go high or low. But you can also be deceptive about that in the order that
Yeah.
you set your cards. Lots going on there, huge amounts going on there. And yeah, it's still scored like poker and there's still betting rounds, but the fact that I've seen your hand and you're revealing it to me in an order that you chose is hugely relevant to the strategy of that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very strategic game, and I really enjoy it. And I would love a dealer's choice poker game sometime myself. But,
well, I maybe I should do one. I think our group is probably mostly amenable to that. We just have defaulted to playing Hold'em because it is the easiest thing and a game that everybody knows. We had a brand new player this week who had never played poker before. He's my cousin actually, so he's brand new to the game, but he's sharp cookie. He picked it up pretty quick.
mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine throwing him into the lion's den of dealer's choice poker. That would definitely be falling off the confusion end of the fun spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Hold'em is interesting because there's a meta game going on, which is that you're not trying to get the best hand you can. You're trying to get a hand that'll beat everyone else.
Well, not even that really, because the real metagame in Hold'em is understanding people's patterns. Like what does someone habitually do that is exploitable has nothing to do with this particular hand, but rather, the overall experience of playing with them. Is this person aggressive? Is this person conservative? High-end poker players watch each other on TV and like keep records of the ways they behave. I'm rewatching a show called The Big Game from like 2010, where the format of The Big Game is great because they get one amateur and they stake the amateur and then 5 pros to like circle the waters and like steal all of their money. And it's very entertaining because they know that the amateur is going to play super loose. They only get to keep the money that they win. So you stake $100,000 in this game and you keep any money you win over that. And so that means when there's only a few hands to go and you're underwater, you just play everything and everyone else at the table just, gets in there against you. Anyway, but these players have seen each other. These players have done commentary on each other as they play poker on TV, and they know each other's games so well that they talk about, I know that you did this because you always do this when this happens. Like that's the meta game of poker is measuring and expecting people's behavior.
It's a form of tell.
Well, yeah, everything is a tell of some sort. Poker's an amazing game, and that's someone in the chat said that they don't want to play poker with me, but sure you do. It's fun.
Actually, it is. I enjoy playing poker with you and with the other people in the game, not because I win, but because it's really fascinating to see the people and watch the interactions. And there's a lot of jokes. We play for fun rather than for money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we get the fun out of it. At least I do. I hope people think that I'm fun to play with too.
I think people only come back if they are having a good time.
Yeah. But that's basically true of games. People come back to them because they had a good time.
Yeah, and different people want different things out of games. So yeah, it's hard even to write a game that all gamers will like, much less to write an experience that everyone would call a game that everyone would enjoy. I was at GDC, Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, back when I had a job that paid for that, and at a lecture in a giant, completely full auditorium where the speaker said, "Wouldn't it be great if there was a theme park devoted entirely to games?" And I laughed, and I thought I wouldn't be the only one laughing because I thought everyone knew that already existed, and it was called Las Vegas. And it's funny because people in computer games, people in hobby games don't think of gambling as gaming at all. They draw circles around the kinds of games they don't like and say that is not a game. But honestly, if you're going to build a theme park around the gaming experience, you need to center it around the kind of games that more people like to play. And by God, people love to play gambling games, whether you like them or not. So yeah, there is this theme park called Las Vegas, and it is based around gambling, gaming. And And that is what it looks like. And so maybe you don't want that. Maybe you just think you want that, but that's what that looks like when you build it.
Well, gambling games go back as far as humanity, as far
As we know. Yeah.
You know, with astragalus and tossing sheep knuckle bones.
Yep. And I don't, we can only theorize, but I think even games of that period probably had elements of luck and strategy. We see strategy in ancient games as well. And I think that is just sort of fundamental aspects of play. We like to make decisions, and we like to be surprised. In fact, I talk about what people get out of games, boiling down to competence, autonomy, and relevance. And competence is the feeling that you're good at something, and autonomy is the feeling that you have interesting decisions. And those two things are kind of at odds, because if you have to make a decision and you don't know how, you're going to feel pretty incompetent at the result. And that's why games have luck and skill. And relevance is how this game matters, not just within itself, but to your social environment and the rest of the world. And that relevance is something that some games provide really well. Gambling games do, because money is relevant outside of the game, and other games do just because the social aspect is relevant. I am playing games with my friends, and they are watching me be smart or have fun or whatever it is that we are doing.
And we're developing ways to trust people.
Yeah, maybe.
Learn what we can trust and what we can't.
Yeah, we can certainly learn how other players think. Like part of the system that we are pushing on is those other players, and we are saying, how does this person react in this situation? Games with a lot of negotiating and bargaining will teach you a lot about people's approach to that part of life. Do people see all negotiations as splitting up a pie, or do they see negotiations as potentially mutually beneficial? There are trading games where those different types of approach come through in the way people do trades and negotiate agreements. And they call it game theory, the science of predicting appropriate behavior based on assigning arbitrary numerical values to results. That sort of quote unquote game theory applies to international politics and arms races and stock trading and all kinds of very non-game related stuff.
And in some cases it applies to games, but not in all of them.
Yeah, game theory. Yeah, it's like saying Rogue is not a roguelike. It's game theory. It barely is about games anymore.
Yeah. Strategy in Poker, Business and War, the Morgenstern, is a fascinating book to read for the places where it fails. To actually describe games.
I just read, so Sklansky talks about equitable division of poker jackpots. So in a poker tournament, when you get down to the last few players, people often negotiate a split of that prize money. Instead of playing it down to the last, they'll say, look, let's just chop it 3 ways. If everyone has the same amount of chips, chopping it 3 ways seems like a fair way to divide it out. But what if they don't? And Sklansky's argument is a person's chance of winning a given tournament is proportional to the number of chips they have left. But his argument goes like this. Suppose my argument is true. See? And I'm like, that's not a proof. That's kind of the opposite of a proof. And it has a lot of language that's super sus, like, there's more to this, but you're too stupid to understand it, so I'm going to skip it. And I'm like, no textbook says that. Just explain it. So yeah, I called my math friend and I'm like, hey, casino math guy, have you read Sklansky's argument about equitable tournament chops? Because it's circular and everyone buys it. And I realize I've never seen the proof.
Yeah, no, I certainly found that there's a lot of circular arguments out there, particularly around quote statistical end quote result.
Yeah, right. Assume that what I'm saying is true. See? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's
thanks for the proof.
Heinlein did in Starship Troopers. This is the best form of government. How do we know? Because it's the best form of government.
Right. Yeah. How do we know the Bible is true?
It's the only
because
one
it
that
says
works.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back, host.
We've come to the basic end of our hour. We've managed to keep people amused, I hope, by watching us play around with games. And Bob is going to come in and put in some pushes for B Cubed Press and its books.
Oh, we got a gamer fella, Andy Lucas. He's a great writer, but he also does some stuff in games. And he said we got a book coming out called Scott's Planet about a bunch of folks that went out and accepted the Union's idea of colonization. And then the Union let them get out there and said, wow, you guys are costing us money. So we're not going to support you anymore. Have a nice day. And they're left sitting on a planet without any support that's in the early Carboniferous, actually mid to late Carboniferous period, where you have a higher density air, you have 13-foot long centipedes or millipedes and dragonflies that could carry away your baby. All fun stuff. So, question for you guys. More likely, James. I haven't heard you guys talk about house rules because some of the great games that I'm going to pick on Monopoly, where house rules evolved in that game to the point that you land on what's that corner square that free parking, where almost half the people in the world think that you pay your fines to free parking, not the bank, and he who lands on free parking gets the money. As you talked about, a way of putting an unexpected twist that can surprise the players or move the dial on who's winning or losing. What do you think about those kinds of things?
What do I think? I mean, house rules are inevitable. No game is perfect, and it's certainly not perfect for every group. And Monopoly is one of those games that's sort of been allowed to develop at the whim of its fans, and so over time, those rules make the game sort of softer and more accommodating. And actually, I wouldn't say half. I'd say almost everyone who plays Monopoly does the free parking rule, and they do not read the rules in the box lid. They only learn the rules by word of mouth. It's crazy because it is only one page of rules. I had an argument with my mother about how the rules of Monopoly work, and I'm like, Mom, you do know what my job is, right? And she's like, no, when you don't buy I taught her about auctioning off properties. You land on a space you don't want to buy or can't buy, it goes up for auction. This is what the rule book says. She says, I never heard of that. That's not in the rules. I'm like, Mom, it's one page of rules. It's right there. But yeah, I mean, I think the fact that everyone plays by the wrong rules, first of all, the rule book now says, for God's sake, play by the rules. But no one's going to read it. That's the whole point.
People don't read that.
The fact that people don't read that one page of rules inside the box lid just shows you how hard it is to teach people how to do a new thing. Gaming is this unique entertainment form where every time you want to experience it for the first time, you have to learn how to do it again. Imagine if you went to a movie and before every movie was a 20-minute tutorial on how to watch a movie. That's what games are like. Here's what a jump cut means. Here's what a crossfade means. Here's what it means when here's how flashbacks work. It's about it happened earlier in time, even though you're seeing it later in time. Like imagine going through that every time you watch a movie. That's what playing a new game is like. And that people do not want to learn rules. They want to just jump in and play. And Monopoly has this feature that's great for family games, which is nothing is secret in that game, which means one player who knows the rules can tell everyone else where they are and what they need to do.
And usually that player knows how to win.
Well, yeah, but winning, you don't win Monopoly, you just play it. This is a great quote from my friend Rick's nieces, I think, at Christmas one year. They said, "You want to play Monopoly?" He said, "That game never ends." And they said, "You don't finish Monopoly, you just play it." So not everyone is in the game to win. They just want to watch the pieces move around.
Yeah, I have to say the first two games I played that have stuck with me were Monopoly and Risk. And on Risk, for example, I grew bored early, and then for my world, I figured out that if I said, "Wait a second, what if I put Antarctica down here as a one-point continent that connected Australia and South America, and then I drew a line across above China and made Asia two continents?" All of a sudden, the players who forever failed trying to get the Asian continent um, suddenly have got options. And for me, that livened up the game, and I haven't grown tired of it since.
Well, and I
But
think that kit bashing is most people's entry into game design, and we were talking about dealer's choice poker, but that's just one of many forms of kit bash. Like, you can call it a house rule if you want, but the more you change, the more that thing sort of becomes your own version of the game. And yeah, you tailor it to your own tastes and make it better for you. That's that is how a lot of game designers do their professional work, is to take an existing product and tweak 3 things and ship it as a new game. And that's like, great, go ahead. It's a lot quicker than making stuff from scratch.
Oh, it was fun. But anyway, have you done that with any of your games? Tweaked them because based on feedback from people who said, "Well, here's what our house rules are."
Well, absolutely. I don't think that I have done a lot with other people's house rules, but I've certainly done a lot based on feedback. Kill Dr. Lucky went through a major overhaul before we did the 20th anniversary edition, and it was based on 20 years of feedback of players saying this is a problem with the game. The game sold, so we don't really want to fix things that sell, but once in a while we will go in and get under the hood. And the Dr. Lucky rebuild was significantly different from the original. You can't even use the components from one game in the other because they're that different. But the feeling is the same. And that, yeah, that
playtesting.
Absolutely. We do that mostly before the game comes out, but then after that we get feedback from players and sort of keep that in a vault until it's time to open the game up and fix it.
Yeah, that is a fun thing. So bottom line is, any closing comments for our folks out there?
Thanks for watching and playing the games. Like we mentioned before, all of my stuff is up at Crab Fragment Labs. That's crabfragment.com right now. And I have been posting a lot of how-to and travel videos on YouTube this year. I'm about to record a whole bunch of more how-to-play videos for the games that I have online.
Most excellent. And Tom,
I don't have anything particular to add other than I really enjoy talking with you, James.
Thanks for having me.
Well, are either of you going to be at Worldcon this year?
Definitely. It's right here in Seattle.
I don't think so. Is it in Seattle? When is it?
August. I don't remember the exact dates.
It's not on my calendar, but if it's in Seattle, there's a chance.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to see you both there. Now, it'll be good to go to a Worldcon that Tom's not sharing, so you can actually talk to him while you're there.
I've only chaired one, so.
I thought you chaired 2.
Nope. The only person who's chaired 2 is his name's gone out of my head. Scott.
Ah, well, there you go. But I'm just pleased to have you both, and so I'm going to say good night or good day, and say adios.